Hello, everyone, and welcome to Your Mind, Your Reality, Your Results, a LinkedIn Live show where weekly I speak with a variety of experts who will give you tips and tricks that'll help you reframe your mindset and lead to more success in your life. I am super pleased today to be joined by Campbell Rapin. I'm so excited for you guys to hear what she has to say as we talk about what is success. So obviously a really big topic. Thanks so much for being here, Christine.
Thank you for having me. My pleasure.
So for those of you who I haven't met or don't know me, my name's Leah Fink. I'm the founder and owner of All Thrive, and we run personal development workshops that focus on mental health. So anything mental health is really great for me to talk about, and I love being able to discuss this today. I also hope you guys are interested. So if you have any questions or comments that come up as you're watching this, please feel free to put them in the chat and we will try to get to them. Also, if you are watching this after it's live and you have any questions or comments come up, please also put them in there because we will be able to get back to them and answer you. So, Christine, let's start by telling us a little bit about yourself, your history and what brought you to this place.
Sure, absolutely. So I have a bit of an eclectic story in the fact that I am both a corporate career girl who has spent 25 years in the corporate world, almost predominantly working in male-dominated industries. And I am also a digital entrepreneur. And I founded a community called Chasing Dreams and Making a Positive Impact. And I think it's so important to talk about both in your corporate career and in your own life outside of corporate career, what does success look like for you? And to recognize that success changes because the path from corporate to entrepreneurship became a transition because the success measures I was seeking started to change.
That is a really good point. Like even starting off, the first thing about success is it's different and it's not stagnant. I absolutely love that idea. So how would you define success at the current point you're in your life?
That's such a fascinating question because it moves a lot. And to me, it tends to always really right in this moment of time be three things. First off, for me, success is about having the mental and physical health to pursue my dreams and really recognizing that I have ownership of that. And so health is number one in terms of my success measure. Number two is that I really think it's important to continue to evolve. You know, I'm a person who's always questing to learn more, to connect to more people, to grow my understanding of the world, and to recognize that I'm a different person today than I was 10 years ago. And I'm hopeful that that person continues to be on a path of discovery down the road. The third thing for me is I'm super passionate about empowering people to define success on their own terms. And that comes through my business because I really believe that it's okay to want more than one label, more than one thing, and to really embrace that we need to drop the shame about the fact that you put your hand up and say, I want this for me. And when you do, it really, really makes you light up and go, I'm living the way I should be living. And the rest of it, those labels don't matter to me anymore.
That is amazing and inspiring to hear. I absolutely love it. And I wonder if, since you're talking about this in a very present tense term, and I know you came from a corporate culture with maybe a lot of gender pieces playing in and power dynamics, do you feel that previously your success was kind of defined for you or there's an expectation around it?
Absolutely. And I think, I grew up certainly with, and I think many people do, the voice of the parents of, go to school, get a good job, climb a corporate job. And one of my earliest plot twists in my career, and I did post about this on LinkedIn, so feel free to go watch the story, was I had a really big plot twist in my first job out of school. And I found myself fired in a circumstance where my male employer wanted to have an affair with another female employee. And the way to do that was to have my job. And so in that moment, I really had to define success for myself because I was gutted and it was horrifying. And I was 22. But my dad sat me down and said, what does success look like for you? Because this is awful. But you have to decide how you're going to move forward. Your decisions will impact how you want to pursue your career. And you need to recognize other women and other people may make different choices. It's not your place to judge that. So I had to pick myself up and figure it out. And when you're working in a male-dominated world, often, socially, the expectations are different. You sometimes can work yourself into the ground because you want to prove you have a right to be there, that you're not a metric and a feel good, and that you're not doing the job because you're a female, but because you're qualified. And sometimes that can cost you your health. And I think when you go back to, how do you define your self-success? It is by the next promotion. It is by taking on more, proving you can, and sometimes losing sight of, does that make me happy? Is that actually what I want? And where I got to now in my career, even before I became an entrepreneur, it was really important that I recognized I didn't have a lot of women mentors. And so important to me today to reach back and to say to others, I want to help guide you, to help find your way, and to know that you can. And you can define that, and it doesn't have to be the path your parents taught you, or your grandparents, or whoever's a person of influence in your life. It's not the job title that's going to make you happy. It's just not.
Yeah, I agree. And firstly, though, what a kind of horrendous experience to happen to you as a woman. That's one of those things you hope to never go through, but we know still unfortunately happens a lot. And what an amazing thing, an amazing experience with your dad to have had him say that to you. And especially when you're talking about, parental pressure of, here's where you should go, but also at the same time having this influence that said that, and now you're taking that on and helping other people with it.
Yeah. And as a woman, there are boundaries that cross, and it's really important that you know where those boundaries are for you, and not to sit and let somebody else's perspective judge that, because you really do need to have a true sense of self. And it really was a defining moment for sure. And, on hindsight, I look back about the story and yeah, it's terrible. There's no two ways to put it, but it was a really pivotal moment. And there were a lot of tears. Like, I had no idea that could happen. I had no idea what I would do next. I had my first apartment. I was paying my own bills. I had no safety net. But I also really learned in that moment, I need to create my own safety net. And that did certainly plant a seed that led to entrepreneurship, because people think that entrepreneurship is this great quest to be the risk taker. And it's not in many cases. And I'm an example of that. It's a risk mitigating strategy. Really important that you have the toolkits to be resilient, the toolkits to know where your mental health is and to protect it. And to find people that will cheer you on, because when there are plot twists in life, you need to know that you're not by yourself. And when we share our stories, we do really realize that we're not the only one who's on that path. And hopefully then when we do share our stories, we can help somebody else know, I can help you, and pay it forward. I think that's really important.
Yes. I love that. I mean, you're speaking to the choir here, preaching to the choir. I love that concept. And, because I obviously care about mental health and entrepreneurs as well. The stat I was reading the other day is that 43% of employees have mental health issues and 73% of entrepreneurs have them. And I think that speaks a lot to what we're talking about, this piece of success and feeling confidence in yourself. Mm-hmm. Because to me, when you speak of success, and what I think about is, if you're defining your own success, if you're really understanding that at a deep level, that does bolster, it's based on your relationships with other people. It bolsters your mental health and your sense of pride and achievement, really, in a lot of ways. So, we've talked about this before, but I would love for you to share with people, what are some of the tips, or how would you suggest they go about this journey for themselves of really finding that sense of success in their business?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the first things is to really recognize that success is an individual thing. And I think anytime that I've had that crossroads of feeling anxious or not sure I'm on the right path, it's really because from the outside I looked successful, but it wasn't making me feel the way I thought it should. And so really recognize that it's individual. And I'm on a workshop where we talked to people and said, what does success look like for you? And what was so empowering was 50 people all said different things. And it's really important that you do look in the mirror. And it seems really silly, but every major crossroad in my path, I've had to hold my own gaze and go, are you okay? What does that window or door that you're looking at walking through give you? What are you walking away from that no longer serves you? And my tip is it's a bit of like, know yourself and look in that mirror. And it, when we look in the mirror so often, we're looking at the reflection of ourselves, but not ourselves. So we're looking at, hair is brown, gee, I'd like to look different in my clothes or whatever. I'm not comfortable in my body. We're looking at the flaw and we're not looking at the incredible opportunity. But when you lift your gaze up and look in your eyes, you're like, I see you. Who are you? What do you want? And go back to doing things that bring hope. And so when you're asking yourself, what does success look like? Think about what brings hope to you and be a hope bringer and say, those are the things that really lift my cup. And if I'm not doing them in my day-to-day world, whether that's your corporate world, your entrepreneur world, your friendships, you need to find a new tribe. You need to find a new community that helps you find hope and lives in that hope. And there are communities out there to do that. Because when you're going through the transition and you're trying to find yourself, not everyone is going to be happy that you're stretching and that you're becoming a new person. And so it can be hard to then go back to, I'll live by your standards of success. But it's really important to look at yourself in the mirror and say, I see you. And then also the second point to that, and the tip I would have is to say, I can do this for me. It's okay to do this for me. When I made the leap to entrepreneurship, it's a funny story in hindsight, but I didn't even have a conversation with my husband about it. The opportunity came to me. It was at a terrible time. I had 10,000 things on the go. On the outside, I should have said no. But I was looking at myself in the mirror, brushing my teeth, and just saying, who are you? This is an incredible opportunity. Why do you hesitate to bet on yourself? In this moment, you could make it anything. And in that split second, I went, I'm betting on myself. I will figure this out. And I made the decision to go into entrepreneurship. And then probably in the morning said to my husband, by the way, I'm doing this. And he's like, should we have had a conversation about this? And I'm like, my husband, and he's like, I'm not surprised you've done this, but we should have had a conversation. And I just said, the answer to me was really simple. And it goes back to mental health. I said, I'm doing this for me. And what's interesting is, when you make that decision to bet on yourself, look yourself in the mirror and say, I see you. The interesting thing is all the people that know me and watch this journey, all have said to me, you're happier. You look happier. And it's not that I wasn't happy before. I had all the outside measures of what success should look like. But I said to people when they started to comment that, I said, I like myself better. That's the tip. You want to go towards the path where you say, I like myself better in this variation. And again, 5 years from now, it might change. But that to me is ultimate success. It's not anybody else's story. It's not anybody else's label. Have the courage to look in the mirror and truly look yourself in the eye and say, I want something different. And I'm prepared to go make some steps in that direction. And bet on yourself. You'll never regret it, ever, ever, ever. I just don't believe that.
That is so powerful. I truly hope that for everyone in the world. Honestly, I think it's completely essential, and especially in the world of entrepreneurship. And what I'm wondering is something that I've noticed is it is easy to say, look yourself in the eyes and feel inspirational. And I also know there's a huge discomfort for people, or fear and worry. And would you have any tips for people who are still feeling, who are our best saboteurs, right? Of, oh, I can't do that, or I'm not quite ready, or just even, I don't want to do that. What tips would you give them to get past that hurdle?
Yeah, absolutely. It is hard. I will tell you, it is hard. And even for somebody like me, who's pretty confident, I think, in most things, it was hard. And I didn't succeed the first time I tried. So my first tip is, don't give up on yourself. This is a journey, and every step in that journey matters. I would say there are lots of resources. So find communities and books that are going to help you do the work, and don't take the surface answer. We often talk about, the superficial of, that's how we started with the labels in the first place, but you need to do some digging. And I find journaling really helpful. I do love a new notebook. It always lights me up. It always has. Such a little girl. It's like, ooh, new school supplies. But, journaling happens. Like, you don't have to say this out loud until you're ready, but you do want to have the processing of your internal dialogue, and you want to peel back the layer a step at a time and acknowledge that it's a process, because you can't take the 10th step until you start the first one. but recognize it's a journey and do it for a day isn't going to work. It's like, I'm committed to doing this. I'm committed to doing the process. I'm committed to finding one nugget and recognizing that it's an evolution. And, the things that I've discovered about myself now are, 3 years of every day reflecting on it, but also giving yourself grace. It's really important to go, do I believe that? Or is that someone else's voice in my head? And when you go, oh, it's someone else's voice in my head, and then you really look at it and go, do I believe that? And if not, what could I believe instead? And I think affirmations are a big part of that because, when you're questing to something new, it's really easy to say, I don't want that. We can all do that really easily. But to make the transition, it's really important to focus on what do you want?
Yeah.
And what door could I open? What nugget can I discover? So give yourself grace, have patience with yourself, find communities. They're great resources to help you on that way, and don't give up. The journey's worth it. Every step matters.
Yeah. And I really enjoy you talking about mantras. I'm a huge fan of them as well, because when you talk about that other voice in your head who's labeling you, I often think it's our own voice, unfortunately, which is much sneakier and harder to think of, right? Or harder to identify which voice that is. I'm wondering, for people who maybe haven't taken this step before, would you be able to give us an example of, an idea they might have about success and some things they might want to journal about in order to explore that?
Mm-hmm. So the first thing is, what are the things, like when you're starting the question of what does success look like, it's imagine your perfect day. Really think about what does that look like? And more importantly, what does it feel like? Where are you? How are you dressed? Who are you interacting with? What's the thing that if someone gave you a list of or a project, what role do you want to play? And really think about those things because that's your ideal life. Do you live it today? And if not, how do you go into that? And we talk about zone of genius, and there's a book that talks a lot about zone of genius. But when you're on that path, recognize, you don't have to be all things to all people. But imagine what your perfect day looks like. And it's a really fun exercise, and it's an easy exercise to get started if you're not someone who's journaled before or spent a lot of time on mindset work and affirmations. But once you've crafted that, get really into the details. Smell the smells that are around you. What food are you eating? Where is the air salted? Are you by the beach? Really spend time in that. It's fun. It's a great exercise. But then you have a structure to say, how do I get towards that dream? And you won't have the dream if you can't achieve it. The universe doesn't work that way. So it's possible for you. That's where you can have hope on it. And then build your affirmations about, in that life, I'm living that. I'm confident. So it's like, I'm confident doing this dream. I'm working alongside that have like-minded people and telling me who they are. Build the avatars, because then it becomes real in your mind. The funny thing about our mind and the mindset piece is our mind doesn't know the difference between what's physical and what's mental. So if you spend time visualizing this and writing about it and imagining what it feels like, your heart rate will lift. You'll feel energy differently. And your brain actually thinks you're experiencing that. If you do that repeatedly, that's how you build it. And that's your success measures of, I want more of that. Not the label, but that life. The labels and the day you build in your imagination. That's success in my mind.
And you've entirely hit on the title of this podcast, Your Mind, Your Reality, Your Results. That's what it leads to, is your success starts with, as we've been talking about, your mindset. And one piece that I'm wondering that I think can often get missed in this piece, like I know a lot of people have watched The Secret and they went, well, I thought about my $1 million mansion and it didn't appear. So the missing piece can sometimes be action. Mm-hmm. So same thing. What would you say to people when they're getting to that point of, okay, I've got this image in my mind and it's so clear and I can feel it. And what is that process? How do you help them along that path of turning it into action?
Well, I would say two things. First off, when you do have that grid vision, sometimes it's, it didn't happen, but I think there's a word that's missing, yet. This is the difference of your timeline and the universe's timeline, or the timeline of whatever, may differ. So don't feel it hasn't happened just because it's not here yet. there's a lot that we have going on, and the building blocks that are building to get there might still be laying the foundation. So have hope in the word that you should add into that conversation. I'm not there yet. That's important. The second thing that's really important when you're going through that manifesting stage is to really think about what action are you taking. And a lot of people say, oh, I wished for that. Okay, wished for that is not the same as working to achieve that. And it doesn't have to be these massive leaps in progress. So that's also a place where I would say give yourself grace. Small actions are really more powerful than the giant leaps. And so I think journaling can come into that too. It's like, take a measure of your progress, because the progress that you miss in the small steps, you only see when you look back and go, wow, I've made a bigger step than I imagined. And sometimes we can give up too soon because we're like, the mountain is big to climb if the goal is big from where you are. And I always say to my clients when I'm coaching them is mind the gap. If the goal is too big and you're frightened of the goal, let's figure that out. But then take a smaller goal and build those 10 steps instead. The principles are the same. Everyday action leads you towards great success. That 1% is the difference between landing in your destination or landing on the moon. Don't also give up if you have a wrinkle in time. Because I think when I talk to a lot of people about health, it's like, I ate a cookie and suddenly my life goals of being healthy are gone. And I'm like, okay, drama queen, like, let's just take that away. Because I laughingly say one small wrinkle doesn't undermine the whole goal, but you have to be willing to work for it. The actions are important. And particularly we spend a lot of time thinking, too much time in our head and not enough time doing. So remember to make sure that the focus and the weight of your steps is on the doing. And if you need accountability partners, they're a great tip. Because if left to our own devices, we spend too much time in our heads. We imagine what the next step will look like. We imagine, this conversation we might have. Just go do it. Because you will make the step, learn from the step, have the courage to make the next step, and the cycle continues. That's key.
And, in that process, I can see maybe having to keep thinking about end goal of success being comprised of small successes, right? Not just that my success looks like this, so this is the only way I can be successful, but that each of those small steps is a success in itself. And I'm a huge proponent of, you could call it ceremony or ritual, but every week actually taking that intentional time to say, what was my win of the week? What did I achieve? What was a success for me? And some weeks, especially now with COVID, it might be, I got out of bed and I did something today, to be honest, right? If you're feeling really overwhelmed. And then on some days it might be, I just realized I've taken this huge step towards success. I just leapt over one of those gaps or finished one of those gaps through my work. And it's actually acknowledging that those pieces are constantly leading to your success. Because when we don't acknowledge them, they can get lost. And then it feels even more insurmountable. So I completely agree and love what you're saying with that.
Yeah, the small wins are so important, and I'm terrible for this. Like I don't take enough time to recognize my small wins. I'm like, type A personality, like what's the next one? What's the next one? But I'm really working on that, and that's that work in progress. And one of the things that I did a couple of years ago, it came probably out of a gratitude exercise that I was doing at that time in my life. And if you want to change the dynamic in your work culture, you want to change the dynamic of the people you're around, instead of asking, how are you today? Which most of us respond by fine, whether we are or not is not, we don't care, is to change the conversation and ask this, how did you succeed today? And you're right. Sometimes for some wins is, I am still fighting. I'm out of bed. I am going to regroup tomorrow. And sometimes it's a really big one of, I smashed a big sale, or I found a new client, or I fit my new clothes that I bought, whatever it may be. But when you ask the question, how are you succeeding today? It shifts our whole perspective to find the win. And I coach this a lot when I was mentoring people in my corporate careers, keep a journal of that. Keep a journal of the small wins. Because a year from now, when we sit down to do a performance review, you're like, I think I was average. And we kind of blend into that. I'm like, you weren't the average. There was tons of times you were exceptional. Let's go back and talk about small wins. And that goes back to the first conversation, which is success is your own measure. Because what success for you and the wins for you are really about where you are, what risks you took, not what risks I saw, because you're living in your own headspace. Celebrate them. Do more of them. But ask the question next time you're chatting with somebody, how did you win today?
And
it's a fun conversation starter.
And I would say be prepared to wait a little while, because people aren't used to that question. And what I found in my work certainly is sometimes it takes that extra moment for people to think of the positives, because we really don't talk about this. If you ask someone, yeah, what was hard about your week? Generally it's oh yeah, this was a challenge. This was a challenge. I'm so obvious. It's also obvious. And then you say, what was the win or what was the success? And they pause. And maybe they get to, oh yeah, I guess I did this well. And I think giving people that space to think through that, to start making it a practice for themselves, is so important.
Absolutely. And have the patience for the pause. I think that that's a brilliant tip, because so quickly we're going to rush to fill the silence. And yet it really starts to really build your relationship and your contextual support of each other and that human connection. It's like, how are you in your story? And you made a great comment earlier I want to touch back really quickly on was, we spend a lot of time in our own headspace and hear our own voices. The irony of the whole thing is we spend more time with our own voice, you're right, than anywhere else. And most of the things that go on in our head, we would never say to anybody. But we were not hesitating at all to say them to ourselves. So that's important too, is to change that dialogue, because we are our harshest critics. And it's a good conversational shift that takes time. It's like looking yourself in the mirror to say, I had some wins today. And the biggest win at all is I'm going to keep showing up, because I always remind people, and I remind myself, I have a Post-it note on my desk that says you can do hard things, and choose your hard. This evolution doesn't come because it's easy. It comes because I'm willing to be in the fight. And we talk the butterfly analogy of, it looks great at the end. The big goal is beautiful. You forget the middle bit's really ugly and gooey and unrecognizable. Well, that's the hard bit. Keep going, and something amazing comes from it.
Yeah. I find it interesting as well. We even get to define the hard bit for ourselves. So this is something I've been working on, and the line I really love about it is, everything you believe to be true is true until it isn't. So I've actually spent a lot of time recently thinking about, what are the truths I'm telling myself about work? Is the truth for me is that it's hard? Is the truth for me what my success is or isn't? Is the truth for me how I'm failing? And then especially, like we've been talking about, those truths in your head that are constantly talking to you and you're constantly reinforcing.
Yeah, there's a lot of great work on that, because I do still work in my mindset of, there is an element of hard. You have to pay your dues. That's a phrase you hear a lot when you're going through life. And the alternate to that is, am I in flow? Do you feel like you're pushing water uphill because your perception is that? And it's also really taking yourself out of your own headspace, because one of the biggest things you realize is, if you're engaging with another person, it's 99 not about you. 91% of the time it's not about you. And that's where we get so much time in that headspace. It's like, just go take action for yourself and be aware of your own story. Is it hard for you, or are you in flow with that? And that's when I have to go back and remind myself, the step in the journey is important. There's a lesson here. If you're perceiving it's hard, there's a lesson. Go back and find the joy. What was the win? And we learn more from harder stuff. We learn more from failure than we do from success, because we spend more time on it. But it's equally important to recognize, how did you win? And what did you learn? Because you're not losing anything. You're learning it at every step on the way.
You can take reason. I like the reframe of, not everything happens for a reason necessarily, but you can take reason from everything that happens. Always use it as a learning. I certainly have taken today as a huge learning, and I'm feeling really inspired right now to go on. Is there anything final that you would like to share with everyone here?
I think for me, it's just a small recap. It's like, my best gift for anybody, and if I could impart one thing to inspire, and thank you, that's such a lovely compliment to hear, is have courage to bet on yourself. You will bet on an employer, you will maybe bet as an entrepreneur, you'll bet on friendships and relationships. Just have the courage to also have the most important relationship, which is with yourself. And you know that you will always have your back. It's not about questing to be perfect. It is about the recognition that you're here for a reason. Your voice, your story, your journey is unique to yourself. That has tremendous value. Don't ever lose sight of that, because you need to do some work, but you have such a gift. And that is my biggest thing I would love people to take away of: have courage to bet on yourself. You're amazing. And you will have a big, tremendous impact when you have the courage to go chase your dreams and to find success on your own 2 feet and your own 2 standards. That is success, I think, for sure.
I love it. I really hope everyone is feeling as good as I am right now and ready to take on the world. Christine, it has been absolutely lovely to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much. It's been my pleasure. I look forward to our next conversation, and to the world. Go light it up.
Excellent. So if anyone's looking for Christine's contact information, we're going to put that in the comments. So do feel free to reach out to her if you have questions, or maybe you do want to work with her a little bit more. If this was not an instant thing from here, I could totally understand that. Or if you have any questions, as I mentioned before, please put them in the comments and we will get back to you. Thank you guys so much for watching.
See ya.